This report is tripe, an embarrassment to the city, and an insult to Ellen and her family. Ellen's family just wanted the truth. It is clear the truth will not come from Philadelphia's law enforcement machinery. Those are the harsh words of Greenberg family attorney Joe Pedraza, aimed at the city of Philadelphia and Dr. Lindsay Simon, the chief medical examiner, and her new report, which once again states that Ellen's death was a suicide. It is hard to believe what is happening in this case. It is on the verge of torturing some people, just a complete miscarriage of justice.
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor. Here's your host, Emmy award-winning journalist, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. This is the show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime, and two more fantastic guests coming your way in just a second. But first, today in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, what was supposed to be a climactic moment in the 14-year fight for justice for Ellen Greenberg, well, it ended in basically silence or near silence. Inside the courtroom in Philadelphia, Judge Linda Carpenter, she's the same judge who just weeks ago blasted city lawyers for dragging their feet. She had a hearing that lasted just about 2 minutes. And the reason for that, Philadelphia's chief medical examiner, Dr. Lindsay Simon, dropped her long-awaited 32-page re-examination just this past Friday, doubling down once again, ruling Ellen's death a suicide. For Ellen's parents, Josh and Sandy Greenberg, it was an utter gut punch. Their attorney, Joe Pedraza, told the court that the battle is far from over. I've got to tell you, it broke my heart. I spoke to Sandy, who said she was just literally incapable of speaking for the first day or so. But she did reach out to me Sunday, didn't get her call. We talked yesterday. That is why we're here tonight. Tonight, we're going to actually break down exactly what went down in court in Philadelphia and what is going on with this 32-page report. Here to do that with us. First up, we've got Gavin Fish, who's got his own YouTube channel, Gavin Fish. Check it out. This guy's a phenomenal investigative reporter, and I'm told not to, I have to use the word unaliving on YouTube, otherwise we'll get flagged. And next up here, Tom Brennan. He started the cold case unit for the Pennsylvania State Police, put in many years in law enforcement, and is now the private investigator for the Greenberg family. He's been working on this case long and hard. Gavin, before we jump into it, a little bit more from Joe Pedraza. He called the new report. As a matter of fact, I think we have the statement here, so let me just pull that up. This is the official statement from Joe Pedraza. MEO, the medical examiner's office, Simon's so-called independent review of Ellen Greenberg's death is a deeply flawed attempt to justify a predetermined conclusion. It includes false claims like the assertion that a stab wound in Ellen's spinal column was made during autopsy, a theory rejected by every credible expert, including the city's own neuropathologist, by ignoring key evidence that contradicts the S word, the extensive 3D photogrammetry, recreation which proves Ellen could not self-inflict all the wounds, unexplained bruises, missing surveillance footage, an intact lock, the count of a toxic relationship, etc. Simon builds a flimsy case on distorted portrayals of Ellen's mental health, propped up by cynical distortions of Ellen's managed anxiety, a condition widely experienced daily by over 40 million Americans. Shame on you, Simon. This report, this is what I read at the beginning, is this report is tripe, an embarrassment to the city, and an insult to Ellen and her family. Ellen's family just wanted the truth. It is clear the truth will not come from Philadelphia's law enforcement machinery. Though Ellen's city turned its back on her, we will continue through other avenues to get justice for her murder by any means necessary. You're a journalist, Gavin Fish, an excellent investigative journalist. This is pretty damn well written. Your thoughts on Joe Pedraza's response to this 32, 35-page report, depending how you print it out. We're going to dive into it in a moment. But first, your thoughts on the attorney's message here.
Well, I think Mr. Pedraza and Mr. Trask, the attorneys representing the Greenbergs in this, have done a phenomenal job. Through the 2 lawsuits that I've read that they have brought on behalf of Josh and Sandy, I think that they have done very, very good job. I can't imagine, because I know Joe and Will are smart men, I can't imagine that they expected anything other than what they got. It makes me think that when they decided to settle back in February, Joel, you and I were standing next to each other when we learned the news of that. I think that they had already gotten what they wanted out of Dr. Osborne, which was the person who did the autopsy saying, yeah, I got this wrong. This is definitely not the S word.
Tom Brennan, for those who don't know, wears his emotions, his heart on his sleeve. He lets you know how he's feeling. Tom, you're not happy about this, but I guess to Gavin's point, are you surprised by it?
Not at all. Not at all. I expected it. Although I expected it, it's still, when you've been in the system for as long as I have, you think that how could an outcome like this possibly come about? And, and then I look back on the history of things, okay? The history of things. When this all began, and this all began with an individual who was in the DA's office by the name of Jennifer Selber. Okay. She was the supervisor for Guy DeAndrea. Guy DeAndrea, the ADA for the Philadelphia DA's office in the homicide unit. He asked Jennifer Selber if he could look at the case, and she said, yes, go ahead. He found the case in a closet covered with some Christmas decorations and took the next 2 days in organizing the file. Okay. There's without any doubt whatsoever, Guy DeAndrea's opinion of this case is it's a homicide. Okay. So going a little further, you take a look at things. There was a meeting between the police and police management and Mr. Krasner, who represented the Greenbergs, okay? And who arranged the meeting? Jennifer Selber, okay? Now, you go a little bit further. We have, okay, now Mr. Krasner ends up being elected DA. So now he recuses himself and sends the file, which Guy DeAndrea looked at, made notes in, and submitted memos on. That file is now forwarded to the AG's office. Who is in the AG's office? Jennifer Selber. You would think Jennifer Selber would have recused herself, okay? I met, okay, with Michelle Henry, who was chief of staff at the time in the AG's office. She later became AG when Shapiro got elected governor. But anyway, and the other lady was Jennifer Selber. What did Jennifer Selber say to me? Her last words in that meeting were, I'm not trying to protect the Philadelphia Police Department.
Yeah,
well, if you vet Jennifer Selber, you'll see that through foundations and all this other stuff, she donates about $10,000 or $15,000 a year to the Philadelphia FOP.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now Shapiro, they sat on the case for 4.5 years. There isn't any reports of their investigation on the AG's reporting system. None. Okay. So if there aren't any reports on the system, what did they do? What did they do? Nothing. Okay. So now, who becomes governor?
Josh
Shapiro.
Shapiro.
Okay. And who's now his chief of who's his who's his legal representation?
Chief counsel.
Yeah, Jennifer Selber. Gavin, have you reached out to her, Gavin?
I have, yes, actually I have.
Hmm.
But you can imagine, Joel, that the governor and I are not on the best of terms since I kind of forced his hand that ended up kicking the case ultimately to Chester County. I am specifically, so I've never gotten anything back from the AG's office when he was attorney general or the governor's office as governor. Any question, anything that I've sent in through the proper channels, through the media liaison, I've never gotten anything back from Josh Shapiro's office. And in fact, anytime there is something that is happening in my neck of the woods out here in Western Pennsylvania, where Governor Shapiro is in town and my publication has been invited to cover it, when I get there, I am turned away.
That's I mean, that's a real big problem. I know other people that has happened to in different cities that I've reported in. It's common practice, sadly, among public officials, but they serve the public, and these people completely forget that when they're in office. That's a problem. I said this on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I'll say it again. Gavin, myself, Tom is a different story because Tom is actually working on the case, but Gavin and I are never going to get this to the point where it needs to be. The only people who are going to do that are the people who watch our shows. It's got to be the voice of the people. You guys have got to put in calls, text messages to Governor Shapiro, to this Jennifer Selber, who's his chief counsel, Larry Krasner, to the Chester County DA. But Tom, to this point, there's another question just now. We're going to get into this report. I'm going to ask Gavin and Tom what's flawed about it, because Joe Petraza was heated over it. Basically, it's a giant FU right now to the Greenbergs. And when I talk to Sandy, I run around both the weekend days with my kids all day, and I didn't see that she had tried calling me Sunday, so I called her back Monday. She didn't leave a voice message, and that's when I got the news almost simultaneously. And Sandy's one of the more upbeat, positive people you'll meet, and I could just tell she was trying to hold it together. She told me, she's like, I couldn't talk to anybody till basically the end of the day, Saturday, and they got this on Friday. It's a crushing blow to them, and it's a crushing blow to anyone who believes that there's an injustice being done here. And I would think it's fair to say the three of us feel that way. But Tom, a big question now that's come up before we get into the report is, what other recourse is there, and why can't this get into the hands of the FBI, the feds? Have someone else look at it?
Well, to begin with, the federal government, okay, the current administration knows very little about it. All right. They could get into the case as a result of the corruption portion of it. Okay. That's how they could enter the case. And that's what needs to be done. We need to get to Mrs. Wiles, Trump's chief of staff, and get her to present this to Trump. Now, if she can present this to Trump, he will, without a doubt, call the U.S. Attorney in Philadelphia in the Eastern District and say, hey, you guys go out and take a look at this. And that's what we need.
Let me just jump in. If any, again, this is not going to come from Gavin or I. Tom, maybe, because Tom is investigating. But if anyone knows anybody, either at the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Philadelphia office of the U.S. Attorney, or has some kind of perspective contact with the president, someone in that, in that atmosphere, ethersphere, whatever you want to call it, email us, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. I didn't mean to cut you off, Tom. I just want people to know.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. But That's what this needs, because what we need to do is they have a grand jury sitting. We need to get these people before a grand jury and put them on record on exactly what took place. Exactly what took place. I mean, you don't have, okay, a meeting with members of the DA's office who was granted high immunity, okay, by the city judges, okay. You don't have a meeting with a member of the DA's office, a member of the police department, the individual who conducted the autopsy, and the medical director of the Philly Emmy's office. And there's no record of that meeting. What was discussed? That they were able to change it from homicide to suicide. What was discussed at that meeting? There are no records of it. Why? Okay. We requested they take an individual look at some of the specimens that were found in the ME's office. Okay. Finally, they hired a neuroforensic pathologist, Dr. Emery.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dr. Emery's told by Galino, examine these specimens, but don't make a report. Who takes a look at these things, comes to a conclusion, but doesn't do a report? Okay? She's instructed by Galino, don't do a report. Why? It's a matter, then it becomes, why? Because then it becomes a matter of record. Okay? That's why there is no report. So, these are the things that occurred in Philadelphia, okay? And these are the things that need to be brought before a grand jury. And for that grand jury to get people like, okay, Miss Selber, you were head of the office. Who instructed an individual to go to meet with Dr. Galino and Dr. Osborne? Who instructed that meeting to take place? Okay, and why? Okay, and that meeting took place just a short time, like within 4 or 5 days after Ellen was found. That decision was made within a week. It was not made 3 months later. Okay, when they published the autopsy report. Okay, that decision was made within a week of Ellen's death. So, these are the kind of things that you can't present, okay, when you in your arguments in Philadelphia, because you're not going to get anywhere. I mean, you're going to get judges that say, okay, Mr. Guy DeAndrea can't testify. Why can't Guy DeAndrea testify? Okay. Why can't he testify?
And that decision may have been the main reason that Josh and Sandy felt like they needed to settle, because their star witness had been excluded from the case.
Yeah. So many layers. I just want to say one thing, because I'm looking at the chat simultaneously, and this is not a political conversation. The show is not political. Not everything in the world has to be political. In this particular case, there is a Democratic governor, Josh Shapiro, who happens to possibly be complicit in helping in a cover-up here. If this was a Republican, I'd say the exact same thing. So this is not a political conversation. This is a conversation about right versus wrong and getting justice for a family where the daughter died under very suspicious circumstances. So don't come at me with, oh, geez, you're talking about Trump. What you're going to lose I'm not going to lose my viewers because of this, because we're trying to get justice for a family here. There are too many red flags and too much smoke that there is definitely fire going on. Now, a lot of people don't know the case. I'm going to sum it up in 5 seconds, which is 2011. Ellen Greenberg is an elementary school teacher in this fancy part of a Philadelphia suburb called Manayunk. There's a nor'easter, snow's coming in. She stops to get gas. She's at home making fruit salad, which is not necessarily the mindset of someone who's going to take their own life. And that evening, she winds up dead. The only other person who's on the premise with her, they live in a condo. In her unit is her fiance, a guy named Sam Goldberg, who allegedly goes to the gym for a while, then comes back up. And from there, we end up under these suspicious circumstances. Now, Gavin, we're looking at a rendering, which sadly the Greenbergs have to look at a lot of times when they come on our show. It is always, as far as I know, it's always been 20 stab wounds. For some reason, in the report today, it's suddenly 23 stab wounds. Let's start there before we dig really deep into the report, no pun intended. But what happened from 20 to 23 here, Gavin?
Well, Dr. Simon, the thing that kind of threw a curveball to me is, as I was reading the report, Dr. Simon rightly points out so many deficiencies and errors in Dr. Osborne's report. And she spends pages listing them. The fact that he only documented 20 stab wounds, when the photographs that she was looking at, she could identify 3 more, one on the, I think, chest and 2 on the neck, that were nowhere in Dr. Osborne's report. She was able to, she talked about how there were 20 extra bruises that she saw in the photographs that Dr. Osborne did not notate. Now, I've gone on record as saying, no, there are not 31 bruises, there are 59. I've looked at it.
And I want to
so
just
much.
stop it there, because whoever's getting annoyed at me for cutting people off, second show of the day. She was in a difficult relationship. That's what we've since found out. We're finding this out directly from the parents. According to the parents, she was at least in the process of leaving. Josh says that there was actually a bag on her bed. And Gavin, so she has these other bruises in addition to the stab wounds. They mention, I believe, 11, but you went and looked at these autopsy photos, and your conclusion was 50-something?
59. So Dr. Osborne says there are 11, and he puts them in 3 constellations, totaling 11. Dr. Simon says, no, there are 31. Gavin Fish says there are 59. There are way more. The other thing that Dr. Simon points out in her report is that there's an hemorrhage in Ellen's neck, like a big hemorrhage on the front of Ellen's neck. And when you look at her neck before they deflected the skin and all of the strapping of the neck muscles, there's a constellation of bruises on her neck. It's obvious to see to me. It's very easy to see. So I was enthusiastic. Like, oh man, Dr. Simon is finding all of these problems with Dr. Osborne's report that so many of us have been pointing out, plus some that we didn't know about, and still decides, for some reason, that she thinks that Ellen did this to herself. It was infuriating. That's what it was.
Tom, I'm coming back to you in just a second. So this is taken from PA Live. I'm just going to read a little bit. This is PA Live, one of the big publications in the Great Commonwealth, minus the leaders. The lack of hemorrhage from a wound to Ellen's spinal cord has been cited as a smoking gun, indicating homicide, according to the Greenbergs and their team of experts. It indicates Ellen's heart was not beating when the cut was made, an impossibility in an unaliving by stabbing. But the new medical examiner's report dismisses this, concluding the spinal cord wound was most likely an accidental cut that occurred during Ellen's autopsy, not when she was stabbed. And then there was a quote from the report: Ellen was alive when all the stab and incised wounds were inflicted. The preponderance of the evidence suggests the spinal cord cut was an artifact from the autopsy. Tom Brennan, your response to this?
Okay. When we learned that, I learned from a contact that I had that the specimen of the spinal cord existed in the Emmy's office. So as a result, we got permission to examine it. Dr. Galino finally broke down and, said, okay, you can come down and examine it. So I took Dr. Ross, the coroner from Cumberland County and the coroner from Dauphin County, okay, and an intern who was studying under Dr. Ross. We went down to the Philly Emmy's office and we examined the specimen. And Dr. Ross showed me the size of the wound, okay? And he said, Tom, the specimen is almost severed in half, okay? The dura, that's what surrounds the spinal cord.
Hey, Tom,
That was
I'm
almost
sorry.
severed
Tom,
in half.
one quick second. Courtney has a connection to the Attorney General. Email us, Courtney, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. And please don't tell me that I'm cutting off Tom for a good reason. Sorry, Tom.
That's okay. But anyway, he said, that's almost cut in half, which means the spinal cord had to be cut. So, and then following that, we contacted these folks, okay, and had a biomechanical engineer and a computer expert do the analysis, okay, of her wounds. That's where you see these drawings come from, okay? That's where all these drawings come from. And the conclusion of the biomechanical engineer was there is no way in heck that Ellen could possibly injure herself the way, okay, in the back of the neck. She couldn't do it, okay? Not only that, but Dr. Ross and I got a female police officer who was extremely, physically fit. The approximate weight of Ellen and approximate height. And we had her attempt to, I had a knife similar to the ones that was used, and we had her attempt to stab herself the way Ellen was stabbed, and she couldn't do it.
And I did the same thing with my wife. My wife is a perfect avatar of Ellen, by the way. Same weight, same height, same physical build, the whole thing.
So, you have all these things. And then you have in the report where she says biomechanically, Ellen could continue to stab herself. When we had experts testify that Ellen couldn't do it. Now, who did Dr. Simon see? Who did she talk to? Did she talk to a biomechanical engineer? No.
I think
she make these decisions.
Yeah, Tom, I know you're asking the question sort of rhetorically, but I don't think she talked to anyone. She took apparently some other expert reports, some from, Ellen's quote unquote team, but she certainly didn't do an investigation. She didn't, from what I can tell, she certainly didn't do that. No. We're going to dive into this. This is a consultative report here by Dr. Wayne Ross. That is the doctor who Tom was just talking about. Materials reportedly reviewed as in previous consult with additional depositions, finding opinions from the report. It would be biomechanically impossible for Ellen to inflict all her injuries. The pain caused by the injuries would have functionally incapacitated Ellen. This is coming from a medical doctor who was working alongside the family, right? Reportedly, the FBI analyzed Ellen's laptops, found no material relating to an unaliving. A key element of the situation is whether or not the fiance was witness to forced entry into the apartment. He said he was with somebody that he was never with. We'll get to that in a minute. The lack of hemorrhage in the cervical spine dura indicates the injury was inflicted post-mortem. Again, that injury happened after she was dead. It is hard to stab yourself once you are dead. You can try, but it is tough to do. Leaving the manner of death as an unaliving prevents any official investigation into the death. there was originally swelling in the cervical spinal cord, but the swelling dissipated after the autopsy. Real quick, Gavin, just get people up to date. So there's an original medical examiner, a guy named Dr. Marlon Osborne, and the Greenbergs had decided they were going to file a lawsuit against him and 2 other employees, a detective and the chief medical examiner at the time of her death in 2011. And lo and behold, Gavin and I were there. The night that this was supposed to go, a couple of nights before this was supposed to go to a jury trial, in the 11th hour, Dr. Marlon Osborne comes forward and basically says, I would reclassify this as anything but an unaliving. So this is the medical examiner, one time from the city of Philadelphia, now coming out after all this time. This happened this year, since 2011, and says it is not an unaliving. Gavin, I'm getting worked up. What now? Let's get to the report here. The COE's built a couple of things. Let me see just here. I'm going to kind of randomly. Okay, so the latest finding is, with a reasonable degree of medical certainty, the manner of death is a self-unaliving. Dr. Simon claims she independently reviewed everything, but sides with the prior Emmy office stance, but admits there is no reasonable explanation for the lack of defensive wounds. Gavin, my question to you, you've looked through this. You did a show on this, which you can find at Gavin Fish on YouTube. I guess
think there's a reasonable explanation for the lack of defensive wounds. First of all, there were not gashes on her hands, but her hands were messed up in the nail beds and like below the nail beds and everything like that. To me, it looked like a struggle. But the biggest thing, and Tom, you can corroborate this for me, is the newest, darkest, freshest bruises were on her wrists. They were on her wrists.
When the wrists were excised at autopsy, okay, meaning they were opened up, you can see the bruising, okay, the hemorrhaging in her wrists, okay. So don't tell me there's a lack of defense wounds, okay.
Yeah, her wrists were held.
Yeah, Gavin, to you, having looked at this, and it's a 32, 35-page report roughly. Is there one thing that really stood out to you, that jumped out to you as just being completely inaccurate or just flat out wrong?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think in total, all of the things that Joe listed are completely accurate. The whole claim that something happened at autopsy is ridiculous, and Tom already talked about that. I just find it incredible. It's so hard to believe that somebody who would spend all that time documenting just how terrible a job Dr. Osborne did on the autopsy would then side with Dr. Osborne's second opinion. That is the thing that jumps out at me. Like, he did this wrong, he did that wrong, he got this, he didn't include this, he did include that, it wasn't there. You know, there are pages of that. And then, oh, by the way, yeah, I think he got it right. Come on.
Yeah. By the way, I worked on this for probably 5 straight hours before the show, just going through all these documents and looking at stuff. And it's to me, it's personally frustrating because, number one, it's impossible to get to everything. And number two, it's just every time with the story, and this has to be, the Greenbergs times a quadrillion. It feels like, you take one step forward and you're taking 5 steps back. Now, 5 happy to see he or she. They're always in the chatter frequently. Goldberg here, Tom Brennan. This is the fiance back in 2011, who, by the way, is married with kids and now works for Live Golf, apparently, LIV. Goldberg told officers he forced the door at 6:29 p.m. At 6:26 p.m., 3 minutes earlier, phone records indicate that he got a call from James Schwartzman. He happens to be a high-powered criminal defense attorney and judge at the time, and his kids went to school with Josh Shapiro, which lasted 1 minute and 12 seconds. One of the things, Tom, and I'll have you respond to this, is the timeline that I was looking at today. There was an awful lot of potential time in that apartment between Sam and Ellen before anything either happened or did happen before he went out and said he went to the gym. But let's start here. Is this accurate that he says he forced the door open at 6:29 but gets a call at 6:26?
Yes. Now, what you have to understand. Now, Gavin lights up Mr. Schwartzman. Okay.
Yes, I did.
Okay. As a result, Mr. Schwartzman's attorney sends Gavin a letter and says in the letter that Mr. Schwartzman and his son, who is also an attorney, were advising Sam on what to do. Okay, what were they advising Sam to do? No one ever asks him. Why? What were they advising Sam to do? Another thing, Stephanie Farr from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Shout out to Stephanie Farr. I never give her the credit.
Awesome.
She was the first one on the story.
Right.
She's been doggedly pursuing it. Yeah.
She took a year to substantiate all the information that I was giving her. Okay. The Philadelphia Inquirer hires the Montgomery County medical examiner to take a look at this. The medical examiner says, the least I would have come up with was undetermined. Is there any mention of that in this report? No. Why? Why?
Was James Schwartzman ever questioned by police?
No.
All right, because Sam was questioned by police. By the way, channeling the heart here, I read the report, and she says there were omissions and questionable conclusions. Did the Greenbergs, Tom, have any right to reject this today? No, right? I mean, they just had to basically eat it. Yeah.
No, because the litigation was specifically about the city supplying us with a report on the autopsy, okay? And they did that.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the report, these are interviews that had previously been done. The building has like a concierge, like a doorman. He's in this Hulu doc. When asked by police, I guess so it's in the police report, about Ellen's relationship with her fiance, the concierge described Ellen as being very excited about a package that was arriving. She was getting, I guess, a batch of wedding invitations. So, and this was, I think, the evening that this happened. Now, Sam, on the other hand, describes Sam, on the other hand, as appearing agitated and sweaty during this trip to the front desk. Now, he says he was coming up from the gym. But, Tom, have you examined the timeline? Because I'm looking at this. Ellen, it's at 1:32 in the afternoon. Keep in mind, it was a very snowy day. Ellen gets to the condo at 1:32. Sam arrives just a short time later at 1:53. It's not until 4:51 that Sam enters the gym per a key card swipe. But at one point, Ellen sort of stops, the cell phone stops usage completely. Yeah. She was using it and then it stops. What if anything, have you found out about this timeline? Because I think that's pretty key too, right?
Right. You know, and the timelines are extremely important. Okay, extremely important. And what you see as a result of the timeline is he's spending almost an hour and a half prior to getting into the apartment. Now, these apartments have been reconstructed twice because of flooding. Okay. The original apartment, all right, when you look at the front door, okay, you have, it's recessed. The front door to the apartment's recessed off the hallway about 2 feet. Okay. So if you were looking through the eye hole, someone would have to be directly in front of you for you to see them. Okay. You couldn't see to the left or right. All right. So there are witnesses that say they see Sam in the hallway. And what is Sam saying? Sam is saying, these witnesses parrot what Sam was telling the 911 operator. So if Sam is in the hallway, he's not in the apartment, right?
Yeah. And that has been my theory for ever since Tom and I talked about this. My theory is when Sam's on the phone with the 911, he is not looking at Ellen. He's in the hallway.
Okay. So, when you take a look at this whole scenario, okay, and then you take a look at who does Sam call? Sam calls Sandy and Josh. He calls them on their landline. Sandy and Josh never knew that he had called them. Never knew that he had their landline number. Okay. Why would he call them? He calls them and says, "Hey, I can't get in the apartment." And Sandy told him, "Well, she may be doing her hair, etc." Okay. But, when you see this kind of behavior taking place, to me, okay, and then you have things like, okay, what time did the paramedics, okay, arrive? They were the first on the scene, okay? The paramedics go in. Sam is outside in the hallway. The paramedics go in, and the paramedic examines Ellen, and he pronounces Ellen, okay? I think it was at 6:40, 6:41, something like that, okay? So he pronounces her, okay?
6:40 p.m.
Yeah. This individual and his lieutenant, they go back, the lieutenant is going back downstairs, and the lieutenant remarks to the concierge, "You don't need us, you need homicide." Okay? Now, the individual who pronounced her comes down and he says to the lieutenant, "We better go back to the station because homicide is going to want to interview us." Did homicide ever interview them? No. Now, this is the individual who is first through the door, and he's never interviewed. Why? Why? This thing is so flawed. You can't imagine. You can't imagine.
This really, really, truly makes me want to just rip my hair out. It's so frustrating. Gavin, to you, and again, just imagine being Ellen's parents here. And then you get I'm not going to get into it. I was going to go off on a tangent that I'm not going to do. Gavin, so just tell, I asked Tom this last time. Do you have a theory on what happened that day, that evening?
Well, what Tom just said, that the timeline is important, is probably the most important thing to me. When I started looking at this, and one of the producers of the Hulu docuseries has been on your show. Her name is Laura Diamond. She and I spent 2 years probably on the timeline. And as Tom's been talking, I've been looking at the timeline. In my opinion, there are 2 windows in which Ellen could have been killed. The first one begins at about 3:41 for me, and this is my opinion, right? Mm-hmm. But begins at about 3:41. It's after she sends her last text message. There was some activity on her computer after that, but anybody could have done that. So between 3:41 and 4:46, that I think is the time that Ellen actually died. And another kill window begins at about 6:10 and ends at about 6:29, I think. So yeah, a lot of us have different theories about this. A lot of people get caught up on the door. How did he get in if the door was latched? Well, nobody other than Sam said the door was latched. He is the only one. One of the neighbors in the report says that he heard the latch, but he never saw the latch. So when we talk about whether or not the door was latched, and this is a big flaw, by the way, in Dr. Simon's report, The only person who ever said that door was locked from the inside is Sam Goldberg and nobody else.
Mm.
And to me, if I'm a homicide detective, the very first person that I look at is Sam Goldberg, right?
Mhm.
Why am I taking his word for anything that happened there? I
Yeah.
should be looking at the evidence, not, I mean, definitely want to talk to him, but come on.
I want to hop in there real quick because as I was reading this 32-page report, one of the things I noticed, Gavin and Tom, is that she's constantly referencing statements that Sam made to the police about her anxiety. Now, she had seen a therapist, I think 3 times.
Mhm.
She had some Ambien and Klonopin and Xanax, which basically 70% of America has on their night table. But Gavin, there was absolutely, and this even the therapist said there was no indication that she had self-unaliving ideation, right? There was no, there was no, I don't want to say threat, that's not the right word, but there was no, in the psychiatrist's mind, there was no possibility that that was an option for her.
That is correct. And Josh Greenberg has brought this up several times. Ellen was anxious. Ellen was not depressed. The only person who ever said Ellen was depressed again is Sam Goldberg.
Right.
A person who is depressed is somebody who may be a danger to themselves or others. A person who is anxious, that is a completely different thing. And she was seeking help for that. Now,
Okay.
yeah.
And if you take a look at the doctor's notes, she's diagnosed with anxiety.
Yeah.
Not severe anxiety. Anxiety like you have, anxiety like I have, anxiety, just like Gavin would have. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't include me in that, Tom. I think I have a little more than you two, but go ahead.
But these are the things that you take a look at, and does she mention the fact that the psychiatrist who was working with Ellen remarks that she is not an individual who would take her own life? Okay.
And that was
Did she
in
mention
Dr.
that
Berkowitz's report. Yep.
in her report? No. Why? She makes all these behavioral health accusations. Okay. I had Dr. Louis Lazarus examine, this psychiatric, the psychiatric reports. And he submitted his report. And he even says, that it was mild anxiety. It wasn't severe. So for me, and I had a lot of behavioral science training in the FBI behavioral science unit. And for me, I don't know where Dr. Simon gets all of her behavioral health knowledge.
Yeah.
Because she's interpreting what Sam has to say, interpreting what Ellen took place. And Ellen called her parents and said, I want to come home. I want to quit my job. Okay. Now, this is an individual that's in a relationship for over 2 years with an individual. They're cohabitating. Why would Ellen call her parents and say, I want to come home?
Mm-hmm.
She's supposed to be planning a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
The save the date cards were already sent out. Who were they sent out by? Sam's mother.
Mm. And I mean, just to add to that, to your point, all this, I think a lot of the mental health is literally coming from Sam's statements made to law enforcement. And if hypothetically had something to do with it, of course she's going to say that. He was just asked. First of all, he did not did not speak to Hulu for the docuseries. Fine. He gave a statement to CNN, not that within the last year, and that entire statement, it's basically a poor me statement, and he points to Ellen's mental health, saying that she should have gotten help. But looking at this, Gavin, bruising minimized. This is from the report. 31 bruises labeled consistent with incidental contact from daily activity. And again,
goodness.
Gavin counted 59. Prior experts called them defensive or abuse-related injuries, but they're calling them, who has 59 or 31, if we're going to go with the report number, bruises from daily activity. And then scene evidence here. It says no blood outside the kitchen, no sign of a struggle, one weapon. Tom believes otherwise. He believes there were 2 knives used, door latch from the inside. Gavin, your thoughts on just the stuff that's on the screen here?
I've got a couple thoughts. Number one, I told you before, my wife is a very good avatar for Ellen. Same height, same build, very strong, like Ellen was, right? Very, very much like Ellen. My wife has very low iron as well, and so she easily bruises. And she is doing all sorts of activities all day, the kinds of things that Ellen would be doing. But if somebody found my wife with the amount of bruising on her that was on Ellen, they would rightly be concerned, and they should call the police, right? Like this, no, that is not consistent with contact from daily activity. It is simply, I completely disagree with that. That is contact incident to beating. That's what it looks like to me. The other thing, what was the line down at the bottom? That was the second one I wanted to bring up.
Let me here we go. Is this? It was
let's see.
No blood outside the kitchen, no sign of a struggle, one weapon, door latch from the inside. Gavin already said that the only person who has said that is Sam.
But the other thing is no sign of a struggle. No sign of a struggle. There was sign of a struggle. There was a knocked over knife block, knives scattered in the sink and on the countertop, and a dead woman beneath it. There were signs of a struggle. It's
yeah.
This infuriates me so bad. I just my blood just gets boiling.
Yeah, it's hard to get through these because it's so frustrating. Jerry Michael here. Does this new report, Tom, have any effect on the Greenberg settlement? I don't think it does. They got paid about $600,000, even though I think they spent about $800,000. Did they ever get that? The settlement still went through in terms of the monetary disbursement, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Monetary.
Yeah. So Tom, let me come to you because Dr. Simon writes, and I'm going to quote here, that the blood evidence was confined to the immediate vicinity, is kind of what we're looking at here, of Ellen's body. How do you I don't know, when she speaks about that, Ellen was stabbed 23 times. Would we expect there to be more blood in more places, Tom?
Yes. Okay. You see blood droplets on the counter. Okay. And between Ellen's feet, okay, there is a clump of hair. All right.
That's right.
And if you take a look at that, it looks like someone had a cloth over it and was wiping. Okay. So that, to me, there is evidence of cleanup. Someone cleaned up the scene. Okay. Did anyone ever check the trash in the building? No. Did anyone, and when you take a look at this, Dr. Henry Lee looked at this, examined this. He said there's evidence of a cleanup. I had a criminal investigative analyst, detective, who has testified in court as an expert. He says there's evidence of a cleanup. Okay. I say there's evidence of a cleanup. Okay. Is there any comment regarding that from Dr. Simon? No. Okay.
Mhm.
Why?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Tom, let me hop in right there. Gavin, I'll throw this one to you, and then Tom can pick it up. But she highlights, this is the medical examiner, that only Ellen's DNA was on the knife. Given the cleanup, the sanitization of the apartment that Tom is talking about, in your opinion, Gavin, is that meaningful evidence or not? She's citing only Ellen's DNA on the knife, and I guess speak about the second knife as well, if you can.
Well, I don't think that the knife was tested for DNA for years following. Is that correct, Tom? That was
No,
one of the things that they didn't know about.
It was supposedly tested, okay?
Okay.
But it was tested in the Philly PD lab.
Okay. So there you go.
Do I trust the analyzation? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sitting here on my computer. I'm looking at that crime scene photo with the clump of hair. Yeah, that looks like blood that has been wiped back and forth.
Yes. And one of the things that I want to do is give me the evidence that Philly PD has. I want that evidence re-examined with the technology that we have today. Okay? The fact that Ellen's blood is the only blood on the knife. Okay? To begin with, was it ever fingerprinted? Her blood is on the knife, but are her fingerprints?
Mhm.
Okay?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's no comment regarding that.
Yeah, Tom, this is an interesting question from Melissa G. Because again, the timeline is really, really important. You heard Gavin say that this could have happened as early as 3-something in the afternoon, potentially. Did the apartment, Tom, do we know, did it have its own washer and dryer?
Yeah, it's in the closet near the door.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great question. Great question.
When you take a look at the scene, and they question, like Dr. Ross said, you read the autopsy report, and there's evidence of wounds made by a serrated knife and evidence of wounds made by a smooth bladed knife. Okay, so there were 2 knives used. One knife was found. That's the serrated knife that was in Ellen's chest. Where's the other knife?
I had wondered about that, Tom, because Dr. Osborne's autopsy report is just a copy and paste from the 100 other autopsy reports that he had in his file. And I had wondered, because in that knife set, that Cutco knife set, I don't think there is one besides like a chef's knife that would have a smooth edge, and it was there at the apartment. So I had wondered, it's a question for me. I don't have a conclusion on this, but the question is, were there 2 knives, or was Dr. Osborne, was it just another artifact of his sloppiness? I don't know.
This we don't know. And it's just like when we found the evidence of manual strangulation. Okay. Well, was Dr. Osborne ever disciplined? In both their depositions, Dr. Galino and Dr. Osborne say no. Okay. I come up with 3 memos.
Yeah.
Disciplinary memos on Dr. Osborne. Okay. And they're done by Dr. Gary Collins, who is now the medical director for the state of Delaware. Okay. And Dr. Collins, in the one, comments that Dr. Osborne missed manual strangulation on a homicide victim. So if he missed it once, could he miss it twice?
And Tom, like, to add to that, the thing that boggles my mind is they noticed it. They took photographs of it. They got up close. They zoomed in and took photographs of it.
Yes.
and did not include it in the autopsy report.
I mean,
Yeah.
like you commented regarding that hemorrhage. Okay. I mean, that is plain as day.
Yeah.
Yet there's no comment.
It's Joel, it's like the size of a nickel. Like
Uh-huh.
right there.
Uh-huh.
It's
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Josh Greenberg, Ellen's father, has a theory that she was strangled and then it was made to look like an unaliving, which is, I don't know, one possibility, I guess. There's a question here, Tom, from Amy. Did the lab look underneath her fingers for other DNA besides her?
The Philadelphia PD lab said that they examined the fingernails of Ellen and didn't find any DNA. I would like I said, I would like all these things re-examined. Okay, if they said they examined the fingernails, give me the fingernails so I can have them examined. Okay?
and they should be able to do that. According to them, there's no crime here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Gavin, let's just go back to this. So in the report, and I'm reading now verbatim, this is literally a copy and paste of this part of the report. Ellen sustained, and we talked about this, I just want to clarify a little bit. Ellen sustained no defensive injuries, which are a telltale sign of being attacked by an assailant. The 31 contusions or bruises found on Ellen's body, which Gavin thinks are closer to 59, are not consistent with intentional infliction by another. Most of the bruises were in the process of healing. Wow, that's fantastic. So she was just in some kind of DV situation and things are getting better here. Their distribution is consistent with quote unquote incidental contact sustained during activities. So this part of it, but again,
she had a bruise like right on her forehead. That is incidental to normal.
Right. And what about the gash on the, we never talk about the gash. She had a giant gash on a 4-inch gash on the top of her head. What is that from?
It's a slicing wound kind of in this area. If you were to, on the image that we're looking at here, if you came down from the top of the black outline of Ellen's body down, to maybe halfway between the top of her head and the top of that first knife, there is a gash wound, slicing wound. And to me, it looks like it goes all the way down to the skull, though Dr. Simon said that Dr. Osborne never documented how deep it was, but it is a slicing wound. And okay, so you want to die painlessly and you want to do it to yourself. Do you start by like slicing the top of your head?
Tom, what is your theory on that gash on the top of her head?
Like I said right from the beginning, that gash causes a majority of the bleeding. Okay? That's where most of the blood comes from with Ellen. Okay? And that is, to me, okay, as an investigator, that's a sign of either flight or fight. So Ellen was either trying to get away or she was fighting with her assailant. Okay? And that's how that wound, that's the results of that wound. Okay? Fight or flight.
The so-called lack of defensive wounds, I know we've talked about this before, but there are fresh wounds on Ellen's wrists and on like the meaty, fleshy part of her thumb. To me, that indicates somebody is holding her arms. I don't know if they're holding them down, holding them up, or whatever, but it's like the darkest, freshest wounds on all of Ellen, or bruises on all of Ellen Greenberg, are on her wrists.
And Gavin, the obvious implication is she was being grabbed by the wrists and manipulated in some way, I would assume.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's another portion of the report. This is again a verbatim from the report. And Tom, I'll throw this to you. These experts, she's now talking in her report about some of the other experts. So she says these experts also opined that the blood patterns on Ellen's face could be consistent with her moving after the injuries to her head were received. The undersigned, meaning the medical examiner, agrees with these three opinions. Since Ellen was likely moving her body during the fatal incident, it is reasonable to conclude that the blood patterns on Ellen's face happened while she was alive and moving her body. The only footprint visible in the blood in the kitchen was consistent with Ellen's own boot.
Oh,
And that's where it kind of cuts off. So let's
real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm going to let Tom do this, but
Yeah.
if Sam was over at Ellen to render aid, to give her CPR as he sees that, oh my goodness gracious me, there's a knife coming out of her heart, why are there not footprints of Sam Goldberg there? Anyway.
Yeah. Tom, do you, I mean,
that's where I was going. Okay.
Okay.
Number two,
I stole your thunder. Sorry, Tom.
That's okay. But anyway, if you you take a look at it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, when you hear the 911 call, how does Sam say she's lying?
On her back.
On her back.
Right. Is she lying on her back?
No.
Okay. Who moved her? Someone moved her. Who? No one mentions that. If you take a look at her face, okay, the blood is dried and coagulated. All right? Which means she was in a different position for a significant amount of time prior to being set up against the cabinetry. All right? So, who did it? Who are the individuals who did this? Ellen wasn't on the floor crawling around.
Yeah. Well, in this report, it also talks about other possibilities, which she says are not accurate. One, that the attack happened so quickly that the victim did not have time to defend herself. Another one is the victim was intoxicated such that the intoxication impaired her ability to defend herself. The victim was physically restrained, but she's pointing these out all to say none of these are true. But Tom, some of these could be true.
Yes, they could.
Do you think it was a sneak attack or whatever?
Does she mention, okay, does the doctor mention the fact that Ellen had the wounds on her wrist? No. Okay. Does she mention the wound on the top of her scalp?
No.
Okay. Now she says that Ellen could have been intoxicated. Did she ever mention the toxicology report?
No.
Okay. Now, if you take a look at the toxicology report, Ellen, the only two medications that were found were the two that were prescribed for her. And was she taking them according to the prescription? Yes. Okay. So Ellen was not intoxicated. She was not under the influence of drugs. All right. So, her reasoning is so flawed. It's, to me, it's unreal.
Yeah.
Okay. It's unreal.
So let me read. So she summarizes. I'm going to read a little portion of this. She has, I think, and this is my opinion, something known as confirmation bias. So she is now seen this or been told this by other people and maybe believes this to be true, that she's putting this here. But I don't think that this was a report that there was no investigation that went into this report, which is what we talked about off the top. But this is now a direct quote. To summarize the entirety of this report, Ellen Greenberg was a young woman suffering from anxiety at the time of her death. The anxiety appeared mostly to be due to her work as a teacher. She was specifically worried that the grades she needed to submit on the day of her death would indicate that she had previously given inflated grades to her students. I mean, this is not like Enron here where you're stealing $100 million. We're talking about an elementary school teacher who's now going to take her life because she gave someone a B who should have gotten a B minus. That's essentially what this medical examiner is saying. She expressed this anxiety. And by the way, she's expressing this anxiety. This is almost exclusively coming from Sam to police. Some of this are her fellow teachers, but again, none of this is a direct investigation. This is all third-hand information, essentially, that this medical examiner is getting. So I continue here. She expressed this anxiety about her grades to friends, coworkers, and her fiance in the hours leading up to her death. She was under the care of a psychiatrist for this anxiety. While her recent change in medications had helped with the insomnia associated with her anxiety, she did not survive long enough to address the anxiety itself. By the way, I can tell you this. My father, may he rest in peace, was a retired psychiatrist. He would literally LOL, as the kids say at this. I mean, just laugh out loud. You can't measure someone's anxiety like on a chart, you know, like it's a personal situation. It's not like there's a blood test to measure the level of anxiety. But here she is saying that she was under the care of a psychiatrist and she didn't survive long enough to address the anxiety itself. Like, what does she know about the level of anxiety she had that day? Maybe it was depression. I don't know. These are all just labels. Like, what was actually going on in her life? She said she had an increase because the sleeping pills worked. Listen to this. Because the Ambien worked, this is what she concludes. That she had an increase in energy to act on her anxious thoughts. I mean, Gavin, this is like insane talk to me. This is a medical doctor who is just like off the farm. I won't use the other expression because it's politically incorrect. But this person is just making these asinine conclusions that most people who don't, I don't know, who won't look at this with a critical eye are just going to say, oh, that sounds like a medical explanation. You know what I mean? But this stuff is pretty insane to conclude all this.
Yeah, the whole idea that she would, like, I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist, psychologist, a social worker. I'm not any of those things. But Ellen was she was not a danger to herself. To say that she had energy to act on her anxious or her anxiety, well, I think that would be that. I think that action would more likely manifest itself as getting out of Dodge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not only had she talked
Yeah.
to her parents about leaving, she had talked to her cousin about leaving. She and I think that she was, and this is just stupid fat YouTuber over in Western Pennsylvania, like trying to figure things out here. But I think Ellen was putting all of her mental health struggles onto her work because she couldn't quite square with the real source of it, which I think was her relationship with Sam. If you think about Mr. Goldberg, he was a catch on paper, right? He was a nice young Jewish kid, came from a fancy place, came from a really good family. You know, Ellen was, I don't agree with this, but I feel like she might have felt that she was marrying up a little bit, you know, and all of this, the wedding was coming up. People were putting money and effort into this. I can just imagine how much stress she was under. And she expressed at least twice that she wanted out. So I think that if she had the energy to act on her anxiety, it would be to just get out of Dodge. That would be the action that she would take. The other thing about this report that just occurred to me, this report, if she were a reporter, if Dr. Simon were a reporter, her draft would come back from her editor with so much red ink she wouldn't be able to read her report.
Great point.
She writes as fact things that Sam Goldberg reportedly said.
Correct.
Instead of saying, Mr. Goldberg said, whatever, she was depressed, she would say Ellen was depressed. She so she was taking as fact things that were in the report rather than things that people said. And I don't know, that might be splitting hairs, but I don't know, the reporter in me
No,
goes,
I don't think
this is so wrong.
No, I don't think
I would
that's
like to
splitting
set-
hairs at all. Go ahead, Tom.
I would like to set some things straight here, okay?
Mhm.
I spoke with the teacher that replaced Ellen, okay? She said Ellen's grades and everything that Ellen did when she came in to replace her was impeccable. Everything was done and done correctly, okay? So there wasn't any issues with Ellen and grades. They were all submitted, they were submitted on time, and they were submitted correctly, okay? Secondly, I spoke with a number of her friends. One friend said that, and if you look at the messaging, they're talking about Klonopin. And Ellen tells her, the Klonopin is working. I feel great. Okay? I feel great. Is any of this mentioned in the doctor's report? No.
No.
Why not? I mean, this is direct, real evidence. Why isn't it? I mean, it's not circumspect. It's real evidence, and these things are totally avoided.
Yeah, no, I hear you loud and clear, Tom. I'm going to read this final little paragraph. By the way, this report comes out on an infamous evening for news dumps, which is Friday
afternoon.
night. Yeah, Friday late in the day
Yep.
when no one is going to see it and no one's going to report on it. And I'm pretty news savvy and I follow stuff pretty closely. I did not know a word about this, and that was with Sandy calling me. I didn't take the call, but I didn't know anything about this till Monday. So maybe someone whispered in her ear and said, "Get this done." The other thing is that there was a hearing today, and I'm curious how much time she actually. I would like to know how much time she actually spent on this report. I'd be curious. Seems like there's a lot of copy and pasting going on. But let me read this final paragraph, then we'll get some final thoughts. But she writes to the medical examiner here, the fiance's DNA was not detected on the knife used to inflict the injuries. His self-reported timeline of events, she says, is corroborated by phone logs, text messages. They don't go through the whole timeline. So I'm saying this timeline is so important. He's home and she's home for so much more time than the time intervals that they are looking at. I mean, this goes back to 1:00 in the afternoon, and she's found dead at like 6 something in the evening. No evidence was provided to indicate Ellen was in an abusive relationship with her fiance. Tom, anywhere along your investigating, I mean, did you speak to friends? Someone had to know that she was going through a difficult time with Sam, right?
Like her friend Allison, they were out looking at dresses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did Ellen? She said Ellen did not let her see her unclothed. Okay, so Allison couldn't see if there was any bruising or anything like that. So a lot of Ellen's behavior is indicative of an abuse victim. Okay. She's talking to the psychiatrist. Oh, he's my rock. Why? Okay. There's a message there. She's talking to Sandy. Okay. On the phone. And Sandy says, why don't you take a look at this group of psychiatrists? Ellen tells Sandy, I can't go there because they know Sam.
I'd forgotten about
Why is Sam going to these behavioral health people.
I did not know that.
Why did they, this is what I'm saying. There's so much to be had here that this is why we should have went to trial.
Yeah.
There are a couple more that I can think of, Tom.
Yes.
On Ellen's voicemail on her iPhone, there are a couple of messages from Sam apologizing,
Yes.
being very careful not to say why he's apologizing, but I
Yes.
didn't mean to do that. I was feeling bad.
Yeah.
There were a couple of those. And then the thing that I keep pointing out is Ellen's wardrobe. Okay. Well, and there are two parts of this. Ellen's wardrobe, in this photo that we're looking at Ellen here, I think this is tailgating at Penn State or something like that. In the wintertime, she would wear this outside, but inside, she was a spaghetti strap, a tank top, a sleeveless, strapless girl. She never, ever, ever wore anything inside like we're seeing here. And you can see this throughout her entire, let's at least call it from about high school on, right? From her young adulthood all the way up until the day that she died. She was a girl that didn't like stuff on her shoulders. Also, Ellen was just a consummate photographer of herself and her friends and Sam. Like there are thousands of photos that Ellen took. But in the last 2 months of her life, starting with just after she tried on that beautiful Vera Wang dress that they ultimately bought for her wedding, starting just after that to all the way to the end of her life, there are no pictures of Ellen inside in anything other than a turtleneck, long sleeves, or a jacket or something that covers her up. And there are very few photos of her that exist past the wedding dress try on.
That is super interesting. And to Tom's earlier point, like she went, I think it was wedding dress shopping with her friend, and her friends were saying, and this is in the Hulu doc, that she was just not herself. And let me tell you something. I'm no psychologist, but it ain't from grading elementary school kids. I can tell you that. I have 2 kids in elementary school right now. There's not a teacher in the world, an elementary school teacher in the world that I know of that would take their life because of accidentally or deliberately inflating a grade for an elementary school student. I mean, it's beyond ridiculous. I can barely bring myself to re-pierce a 3-decade-old earlobe piercing myself, let alone stab myself in the base of my skull brainstem. Is this serious? This poor girl, Melissa. Sadly, it is. Melissa, let me know if you're from Jersey. Surviving the Survivor at Gmail. I feel like you're from New Jersey with a name like Melissa Turcotte. You could be from Philly too, though. You never know. So I'm going to let Tom have the last word. So, Gavin, what do we do, man? Where do we go from here? I got to tell you, I was like the wind was knocked out of my sails when I spoke to Sandy. My heart bleeds for them. It's something, there are too many things going on here. There is too much smoke for there not to be some sort of fire. So
yeah,
I guess your final thoughts. What do you think people should do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
My final thought is that in the hearing today that really only lasted a couple of minutes, there were 2 things that were said. Number one was Joe Pedraza told Judge Carpenter that they're in possession of the report. He thanked her for assistance in getting the report. He withdrew his motion for sanction. Then he said, "What the future holds, we'll see." And he did it with a little sparkle in his eye. And then Judge Carpenter said, "Okay, is the matter closed, at least in terms of the petition before the court now?" And yes, the matter is closed. That is, for me, just foreshadowing that Joe and Will and Josh and Sandy have a plan to move forward, and it's going to. I mean, I have faith. Josh and Sandy are the grittiest people, and I say this like in the best way. They display true grit.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else that I've ever known or seen has displayed the amount of grit that Josh and Sandy have. And I think with their team, which includes Tom, I think that we're going to move forward and we're going to see some more stuff in court.
Let's pray that is the case, and I will actually do that. Tom Brennan, we got to get this out of Philadelphia. That's for damn sure. Nothing is going to happen in the city. Like I always say, it's always shady in Philadelphia. So your final thoughts here, and also please tell people what they should do. People feel helpless about this.
Okay. There's what we need is someone to get this, someone in law enforcement. Okay. Now you can't, the state AG is now a Republican. Okay. Pennsylvania State Attorney General. Will they take a look at this case? I doubt it very much. Okay. Since they don't have, I supplied them with some documentation. Or do they have any documentation on their system regarding this case? No. Why? I don't know. Okay, so we have to look at the federal government. We have to get to the federal government to approach the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District in Philadelphia to take a look at this case and take a look at it from the corruption point of view. Okay. If Philadelphia is fighting this case the way they are, okay, why? I think, okay, because of the contacts that I had in the Emmy's office, that this is not the only case. Okay. So if this case is successfully brought to a conclusion, who else is going to take a look? Okay. The case that was going to be before the Supreme Court, which they agreed not to go forward. Okay. That would have been a case where the Pennsylvania Coroners Association did not want to see that case go before the Supreme Court because their power of I said this is the way it is and this is it would not have been it. Okay. That case before the Supreme Court, if we would have won it, the Supreme Court would have said, no, you don't have the last word. You can be challenged. So, it's things like this. That's why I said we need someone to get to the federal government, okay, to take this case, take it and run with it. If I was still in law enforcement, if I was still connected to the FBI, I would have these individuals, they would be trying to find a cave to hide in. Okay.
I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. I'm sending a tweet because X is a very powerful. I hate X and it's a cesspool, but I'm sending a tweet right now to the FBI director. And then please follow me on Twitter at podcast STS. Take my tweet and retweet it. That's one way to start. That's going to make me feel a little better. Carm and my dad, again, may he rest in peace, were big advocates of always taking action. Don't sit and have this paralysis analysis. So I'm going to do one small thing right now, and I'm going to tweet. I was just writing it right now, literally writing it. So I'm going to tweet out to Kash Patel, who I don't know much about. Not a huge fan, whatever, but that's neither here nor there. I think he's in over his head probably. However, let's tweet at him and let's see what kind of response we get. Again, my Twitter is at podcast STS, and I'll send a message on Instagram, Surviving the Survivor. Let's just start to tweet and retweet these things. Again, Gavin, myself, Tom is the only one who sort of physically has a hand in this and can make stuff happen. Gavin and I can just report on it, but the real change is going to come from you all. But if we can get, let's start slow, 100,000, 200,000, which is what Nicole Longo did, retweets, he's going to start to notice this. If we get 1 million tweets, and let's tweet at Nancy Grace to retweet it. I'll do that right now. Then you guys retweet it. Let's try to get the attention of the federal government so that we get another set of eyes on this. Let's start there and see what happens. But Tom, it's not over yet. Just assure me of that. Is that right?
Oh, no, it is. It's far from over. Far from over. Okay. You know, like my wife says, you know, as long as he's talking, you don't have to worry about it. When he shuts up, then you got a problem.
That's what I say about my mom all the time. That's what I say that about my mom. If she goes silent, there is a problem. All right. On that note, love you all. Let's please get justice for Ellen Greenberg. You just heard Tom Brennan say it is not over, and he's not stopping talking. Gavin and I are not stopping talking. Please go subscribe to Gavin's channel, Gavin Fish on YouTube. Guy's an amazing investigative journalist. This is Ellen Greenberg on your screen. She did not deserve to die in the way she did. Let's please follow through. We'll be doing more stories. I'll get Josh and Sandy on. Guests, stick around 1 second. Love you all. Have a great night. We're back tomorrow with a 12:30 p.m. show.